All right, welcome. Today, we're going to dive into a really fascinating case study. It's a condition that honestly affects almost every business out there, but it's very rarely diagnosed correctly. We're going to look at the business owner who knows their data systems are broken, but for some reason just can't seem to fix them. And we're going to look at this like behavioral scientists, peering into the hidden psychology behind the whole problem. So, let's get started. First things first, let's go over the common symptoms. Now, as I run through these, I want you to just notice if you have one of those moments of recognition. You know, that little jolt where you think, oh my God, that's us. In our field, we actually call that a recognition moment. And believe me, it is an absolutely crucial first step toward a diagnosis.
Okay, so here's symptom number one, the Monday morning data archaeology dig. Sound familiar? A totally simple question gets asked, and suddenly you're hunting through multiple, conflicting spreadsheets. You end up spending way more time just trying to reconcile the data than actually using it. And by the end, what have you done? You've just created another file that you'll probably never trust or look at again.
Or what about this one? A deal closes, and then it just vanishes. It disappears into this void between departments. Sales is celebrating, right? But operations, finance, and fulfillment are all left scrambling, manually copying information from one system to another, sometimes days after the fact. Meanwhile, the client's just waiting, and you're stuck playing the role of a human API. Oh, this one is a classic. You invested in a beautiful, probably very expensive business intelligence tool. It's supposed to be your single source of truth, right? The holy grail. But nobody uses it. And why? Because deep down, everyone knows the underlying data is just flawed. So what happens? They retreat back to their own private spreadsheets, and that beautiful dashboard becomes a very expensive piece of wall art. And finally, there's the question that just breaks your brain. Something like, hey, what's our customer lifetime value by channel? It should be simple, but you realize it requires this impossibly complex data pull from 5 different systems. You start the project, you get completely overwhelmed, and then you just abandon it. And that crucial strategic question, it just goes unanswered. Now, if you recognized yourself in any of that, the data digs, the black holes, the untrusted dashboards, here is the single most important part of our diagnosis. You are not irrational. In fact, your behavior is predictably, psychologically normal. What's really interesting here is that the very behaviors creating all this chaos are actually the output of cognitive biases that evolved to help us survive. So, the first cognitive mechanism at play here is something called status quo bias. Your brain looks at your current broken system and it thinks, yeah, this is painful, I get it, but it's familiar pain. We know how to work around it. The thought of a new system, well, that introduces unknown pain, and your brain will almost always choose the devil it knows. This is the force that's really behind that Monday morning data archaeology dig. The pain of hunting through spreadsheets is familiar, while the pain of setting up a new unified system feels way, way riskier. And then there's loss aversion. You know, research shows we feel the pain of a loss about twice as intensely as we feel the pleasure of an equivalent gain. This is exactly why you won't spend, say, $2,000 on an integration that you know would save you $8,000 a year. The immediate certain pain of that $2,000 loss just feels so much more real than the vague future gain. And of course, we have the classic planning fallacy. You look at your data mess and you think, you know what? I'll just fix this on a Saturday afternoon. But that 1-hour project, it inevitably takes 4 months. We consistently, almost comically, estimate based on the best case scenario, completely ignoring the complexities that will absolutely 100% come up. It's a universal human thing. And finally, there's the curse of knowledge. The system makes perfect sense to you. Why? Because you built it or you've been using it for years. You know all the little workarounds, all the quirks. But because it makes so much sense to you, you literally cannot remember what it's like not to know this stuff. You see a simple system. Your team sees archaeological ruins with no map. So, okay, we're stuck in these cognitive traps. How in the world do we get out? Well, the breakthrough comes from a very unexpected place, a 16th century Scottish pub game that is now, quietly, one of the most censor-dense sports on the entire planet. Yep, I'm talking about Olympic curling. This is the mental model that can change everything for you. Think of your data as that 44-pound curling stone, your business processes and your systems. That's the sheet of ice it travels on. And here's the crucial point. Right now, you're just letting that stone slide down the ice, kind of hoping it ends up in the right place. You're a thrower without any sweepers. Now look closely at this because it really reveals the psychological trap we all fall into. Our flawed approach over on the left is to try and eliminate friction completely. We think if I just buy one more tool or force one more integration, I can make the ice perfectly smooth. But the curling approach shows us a radically different way. See, friction isn't the enemy. Unmanaged friction is. The sweepers aren't removing all the friction, they're strategically heating the ice just enough to reduce it, making these tiny, precise adjustments to guide the stone exactly where it needs to go. So, before we can even learn how to sweep, we have to understand the true cost of leaving all this friction unmanaged. And it shows up as a series of invisible taxes that are just silently draining your business of time, money, and frankly, morale. So, let's start with what we'll call the time tax. Research shows that for a pretty typical 10-person team, the combined time spent just searching for information and doing manual data entry adds up to around $400,000 a year. Let that sink in. That's not a rounding error. That is multiple salaries just evaporating into thin air. Then we have the error tax. Gartner estimates that poor data quality can cost a business up to 25% of its revenue. So for a $5 million business, that's over $1 million a year just lost to operational mistakes, wasted marketing spend, and customer churn, all because the data is just wrong. And this chart brilliantly illustrates the opportunity tax. This is the cost of the decisions you don't make because you don't trust your own numbers. As you can see, companies with a high-quality data culture are 2.6 times more likely to crush their business goals. That gap right there between the two bars, that's the cost of being slower and less confident than your competition. Okay, that's the diagnosis and the damage report. Now for the treatment plan. And the good news is, you do not have to rip and replace your entire system. You just need to learn how to sweep. And we can start right now with two simple, really powerful actions. The very first step is a simple friction audit. For 1 week, that's it, just observe. Log every single time you or your team says something like, "Where's the latest version?" or "I need to check with Sarah about this." Each one of those is a data point. You're not solving anything yet. The only goal here is to make the invisible friction visible. By the end of the week, you'll literally have a map of your most critical sweep zones. Okay, the second step is what I like to call the trust test. And it starts with a simple but, man, a really powerful question. If you had to bet the entire future of your company on just 3 metrics being accurate, which 3 would they be? Here's how it works. Just list out your main metrics and honestly, really honestly, rate your confidence in their accuracy from 1 to 10. Now, from that list, identify the vital few that you actually use to make critical decisions. And here is the breakthrough. Focus all of your sweeping efforts on just those vital few. A dashboard with 3 numbers you would literally bet your business on is infinitely more valuable than one with 30 that you secretly doubt. And all of this leads us to the ultimate cognitive shift. It's about changing the objective itself. See, the goal is not to achieve some impossible state of data perfection. The goal is to build something far more powerful, an intentional system. And this brings us right to the final and I think the most important part of our diagnosis. Just let this one sink in for a second because this is really the core insight from our entire analysis. The businesses that win aren't the ones with zero friction. They are the ones who have done the psychological work to see their friction clearly, to understand its cost, and to apply targeted, mindful effort. That's the sweeping, where it matters most. They manage friction with intention. So the diagnosis is complete. The hidden patterns, they're not invisible anymore. You can see the ice, you can see the stone, and now you know exactly where to sweep. The only question left is, will you pick up the broom?